principles lifting us higher, learning without blame, fueling our fire. Together we grow, together we thrive, keeping operational excellence alive.
Hey everybody, it's Jeff from Learning Teams. I'm here with Brent, and we just wanted to take a few minutes and share with you how we use Jenga, how we use the game of Jenga when we're talking about HOP and learning teams and organizations. I asked Todd where Jenga came from. I first noticed it on the cover of all of his books. As an homage to Todd, we have it on the cover of our books. So I asked him this morning where it came from, and he said around 1998 or 1999 they were using it as an instruction tool, as a teaching tool at Los Alamos. And it's evolved over that 26 years since then. So we thought we'd take this opportunity and just show you how we speak to Jenga when we're using it in an organization. And it starts with this nifty Learning Teams Jenga box. Terrific for travel, easy for setup. There's the Jenga. Okay, kind of easy. All right, there's our Jenga stack. So Jenga's an interesting thing as a stack. When it's all perfect and complete, it can bear so much weight. It's like cribbing, it's very robust and strong. And I think everybody wants to think their organization is complete and intact and everything's where it should be. And we're very reliable and resilient. In fact, you know, a Jenga stack is a bunch of separate pieces that rely on each other, and they do interrelate. The loss of one piece won't cause your stack to fall over, but it does change the physics of how the stack is, in the same way that one small change in your operations may not cause a loss event, but it does impact the whole. Now, going back in history, if we go back to Heinrich in 1931, he spoke of dominoes. He spoke of 5 dominoes. And his dominoes began with social environment or ancestry, then fault of the person, then that person commits an unsafe act or creates an unsafe condition, then the incident occurs, and then there's the consequence, the loss. So those were the original dominoes of how an incident occurs, going all the way back 90 some odd years, 93 or 4 years later. We use the Jenga stack. And so I'm going to tell you a bit of a story about from an organization that I think really captures the strength of using the Jenga model to talk about learning from everyday work and to talk about the things we mean in HOP and the 4Ds. So here's the scenario. There was an incident that occurred when a truck from the warehouse was delivering goods to a store, and an associate had to go into the store to unload that pallet, and the pallet fell over onto the worker and seriously injured the worker, and it was very unusual for a retail environment. And so the organization did an investigation into that incident, and there was 2 primary factors they found. Interestingly, they kind of line up with that 1931 thinking. They found an unsafe condition. They found that the pallet was leaning in transport and made it difficult for the worker. So they found that. The other thing the investigation said was that the worker failed. The worker should have gotten help, should have refused work, should have somehow been better. And those 2 factors, if you can imagine me tipping this over, the first investigation said that those 2 factors were what created what led to the incident: an unsafe condition and an unsafe action. So the organization was not really content with that answer, and they asked us to help them with a learning team to discover more about that event. So we did it virtually, two 90-minute meetings, and we had a few representatives from the warehouse side in the company and a few representatives from the store side in the company. And what we wanted to learn about was store deliveries. Tell us about making these deliveries to the stores. Everything we need to know. And we learned a lot of fascinating things in those 2 quick sessions with 5 or 6 people. So the first thing I'll mention is that indeed the pallet, this is whatever it is, 3.5 by 3.5 or 4 by 4, 8 feet high, shrink wrapped, and we learned that it was indeed leaning in transport. Not only that, not only was it leaning, it basically adhered itself to the pallet beside it, which was also an 8-foot tall shrink wrapped pallet, and they were quite stuck together. We learned that one of the things that caused that lean was that the pallet was shrink wrapped, but the shrink wrapping didn't grasp the pallet it was sitting on. It unitized the boxes, but it didn't capture, it was out of calibration. It didn't capture the pallet. So we actually learned why it was leaning in transport. We learned that the pallet was pinwheeled, and by that I mean it was rotated 90 degrees to fit better in the back of the truck. And it's done at the warehouse using a powered forklift. The pallet was pinwheeled, is the point. Now the worker did not have a powered industrial truck to unpinwheel and remove that pallet. He was using a manual pallet jack, so that was a factor. We learned that when the pallet was pinwheeled, it broke, and parts of it broke off at the bottom, which further made it difficult for the worker and led to some bits of wood around the floor and banding and other garbage in the floor of the truck. We learned that. Now, where it was said in the investigation that the worker was alone and shouldn't have been alone, we learned something behind that too. We learned that there had been a recent staffing policy change, and the staffing numbers were reduced, so that there was only 3 associates in the store, and the store was open. So only one person was really available to go and do this work. So it wasn't a choice to do it alone. It had to do with complying with the policy. We learned a few factors having to do with the truck driver. Now, the truck drivers are a third-party service. By contract, they're supposed to be helpful, whatever that means. And in this case, we learned that the driver was late. He was in a rush, he was impatient, and that wasn't helpful. We also learned that these trucks have deliveries on one side, returns on the other, and some drivers will help move those around and facilitate unloading, and this driver did not do that. So there's a few ways in which the driver added factors. So I'm going to pause there, and I don't know if you've noticed, anybody pulling a Jenga stack in our demonstrations, whether it's us or somebody from the audience, everybody uses care. Nobody wants the Jenga stack to fall. And I think that there's something nice about that. The workers don't intend for incidents or accidents to happen. Everybody's working with due care as they see it. And so I think every time we pull a Jenga piece, we're careful not to make the stack fall. And I think that that's representative of how work is done. Work is done with that kind of care. So back to some factors. We learned that the pallet was top heavy, 8 feet tall, and the upper boxes were very heavy, and the lower boxes were larger, lighter cardboard boxes. And now this is normal. It's not an ideal circumstance, but often pallets are constructed this way because of the order in which boxes come down the conveyor belt. So we learned that it was top heavy, but that's not rare. That does sometimes happen. Now, we learned that at the warehouse, there are dock lights. These trucks don't have lights in the back. It's hard to see at times. And at the warehouse, there are lights on arms that can shine up into the back of the truck. The stores don't have these lights. So we learned that that was a factor that the worker was contending with. Check that out down there. We learned that the loading ramp is at an angle, which was pretty significant actually, because that incline that the ramp was at was going to lead to gravity. And once the pallet was up off the floor on the pallet jack, it was going to move. And that's what happened. Before that action, before the worker lifts the load up and turns the handle and goes to unload, the accident has not yet happened. And this is what our work looks like. It looks different from different angles. The Jenga stack will look different from the left, from the right. And it takes us, the learning team, we had the warehouse and store reps, we want to see our Jenga stack from all angles. how does the Jenga stack look from above? How does it look from head office? We often get a chuckle at this stage. The Jenga stack looks good from head office, and it truly does if you were looking down from the ceiling. And I'd be more specific and say there's 3 Jenga pieces that are often seen by senior management. One is injury rate. Definitely there's regular reporting on injury rate. One might be investigation findings, as in the first investigation in this incident. And the other might be some kind of audit or compliance score. And what I think is fascinating about those 3 bricks is that they just don't contain the rich information we need about our systems to really be practicing HOP and learning teams and the 4Ds. So that's an interesting factor. When we discover these things, we call them weak signals. Each one of these things happens, not a big deal in and of itself. And so we call them weak signals. They're not shouting for attention. In fact, they're easy to see when you know how to look for them, but they're easy to dismiss as well. They're just seen as small things. But they're there to be seen and identified before the stack falls over, before the incident happens. So this is the power of using humble inquiry, proactive inquiry, using the 4Ds to go and try to find these conditions before an incident happens. Even more, wherever we're down to a precarious situation in our bricks, we call those a sticky. When there's just one block and some balance holding us up from having an incident, we'd call that a sticky degree of risk. And no organization can have a perfect Jenga stack all the time. But when an organization does become aware that they've got a vulnerability like that, controls can be popped into place quite often. Quite often when we're aware controls are weak or not present, we can put them in even temporarily until more permanent fixes can come along. So I'm going to wrap up with a couple of key points. I think that the Jenga stack does an excellent job. The Jenga exercise does an excellent job of helping us convey and communicate what it is we mean by HOP and learning teams and the 4Ds. It helps us learn to appreciate what is happening before anything bad has happened. It helps us appreciate life on the blue line and what workers are navigating with. It's not a perfect world. So it really helps us see work as done in everyday operations. We think that every block then becomes an important lesson about a system vulnerability and an important opportunity to improve performance by addressing these issues. And really it's what Todd would call a pre-accident investigation, is going out and finding these things before something bad has happened. Brent and I get to do fatal investigations on occasion, and it's hard when we can go and we can learn these factors that were there to be seen before the event, but with many organizations they're not attuned to seeing them, finding them, or appreciating them, and that's really what we want to do. Finally, I'd say, how well does blame fit into any of this, that we've learned about this event? Do they make sense as dominoes anymore? Is one of these dominoes the root cause? It really helps us appreciate the complexity and the messiness of everyday work. So a call to action. It's a simple exercise. It's visually powerful. It communicates this very well within your organization. So if you've had an incident that is safe to discuss, that was left with a fairly simple couple of factors on investigation, if there's an opportunity to revisit that and learn more contextual factors around that incident using the 4Ds so that you have a first story of 2 pieces and a second story of 10 pieces, then you've got your own Jenga example. Go get yourself a set of Jenga and tell the first and second story of that event like we've done here. If you alternatively go have a 4D conversation. Before an event has occurred, you can go out and have a 4D conversation with your people and learn factors like this around a particular task or operation, and you can come back and you can pull pieces for those things you learn and really visually show the organization how safe and stable and secure that task is set up? Is it set up for success? Or does it look like this? And you're expecting people to deliver reliably when this is how our stack looks. So thank you very much. Let us know how it goes, and reach out if you'd like any assistance. Thanks.